Hello, this is Mike Madden and you're listening to the Arts Show podcast. Here you will find interviews with artists, musicians, authors and anyone else in and around the arts. Some of the interviews are recorded direct from the Arts Show on Expat Radio, with one or two specials in between. This show features musical director Nick Montague talking about his career in music and particularly with the Tideswell Male Voice Choir. It was originally broadcast on Expat Radio on the 11th of February 2019. Now my first guest tonight is an unusual one for us. It's musical director Nick Montague, who is currently in that position for the Tideswell Male Voice Choir. Nick, good evening to you.
Good evening.
This is the first time we've had a musical director on the show, so just explain in the context of Tideswell Choir what you actually do for them.
Okay, so a musical director is the person who stands at the front and waves his arms about. And the job is to do two things, really. The first one is to rehearse the choir, so get them, to learn the songs and the notes and how they go. And I do that with a lady called Alison at the choir. And the second job is to conduct the choir while they're doing a concert.
Right, so you've got the Tideswell Choir has actually got more than 40 members, and I guess you've got to control Alison. This is Alison Wheeldon as your musical accompanist, and you've got to control all of those. So how do you actually go about that? Does it take a lot of practice?
To control them? No. Well, I suppose it's just something that comes with experience. I mean, I've been doing this for so long now that I don't think about it. But you've got to think you know what you're doing, and then they will follow you. And then the second part of it is that if you get the results and the choir sounds great, then we know it's working.
And you've been with Tideswell for I think it's just over a year now. And I think you're still up to 40 members, and that's incredible in terms of the population of Tideswell, which is a very small Derbyshire village. It's only got about 1,800 people living there.
Yes, that's right. And the reason, obviously, all 40 are not from Tideswell. They come from as far afield as Sheffield, Stockport. So some of them travel quite a long way to get to Tideswell. I mean, when the choir was originally formed, it was Tideswell people, but now it's expanded out. Yeah,
and I guess yourself, you must travel probably about the furthest to get there of everybody.
Incredibly dedicated. I travel from Knutsford to Tideswell, which is about an hour's journey. It used to be more than that, but they've just opened a new bypass, as you may know, across to the A6, which has helped matters somewhat. The problem does come in the winter. So in the last, as you can imagine, the last few weeks, we've had some challenges with the snow because Tideswell is quite high up. And as you climb up to it, the temperature drops. And
that road's very, very exposed as well, isn't it, over to Tideswell?
Yes. I think they call it the Ridge, don't they?
Yes, that's right. Yes, and it is the largest, what they call the largest settlement in the Peak District National Park after Bakewell. So it's still not very large, and getting 40 people there, it's quite an achievement. Now, your involvement came because you knew one of the famous patrons of the choir, Edwina Curry, is the president. Is that right, that she got you involved?
Yeah, so what happened there was that they were looking for a musical director, and Edwina, her husband John, is a bass in the choir, ex-flying squad officer, and Edwina is the president. And they were looking for a musical director, and she found me through a cruise ship website, because I also do this on cruise ships. So I go out on, for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks on a cruise ship and run a choir from the passengers. So you'd call that a scratch choir. So Edwina contacted me via that. That's how she found me and invited me over to see them.
Right, and I've seen the choir perform, and it is quite something when you see these 40 or so gentlemen all dressed smartly and singing in perfect harmony. But when you get to put them together, I guess with your trained ear, you would know what's a baritone, what's a tenor. Do you categorise people quite quickly?
Yeah, you can do it really quickly. I mean, I also, in the past have run choirs which are soprano, alto, tenor, bass, because that's the sort of mixed choir format. And the ranges of the different voices, there are actually 4. So you have a first tenor, a second. Do you want all this information? Yeah, first tenor.
Our listeners will be fascinated by this because they've never heard anything about a choir before.
Okay, so if we go from the top, we have the ladies are the sopranos generally. And then not in this choir, and then we have a mezzo soprano, which is between the one next down, and then we have an alto, and then you move across to the men, and you have a first tenor, and then a second tenor. We're going down in pitch now, and then a baritone, and then a bass. So the ranges of the voices are fairly well established. So I can sort of tell somebody what they are within about 2 seconds or 2 minutes if I just plonk a few notes on the piano and they la la la. I know what they are.
Right. I mean, that in itself must be a fabulous talent. But what happens if? Because I've actually been invited along to the choir, as probably most gentlemen who've heard them. But what do you do if somebody simply cannot sing?
Right. Well, this is a question that comes up quite a lot. So I have a theory that 80 to 85% of people can sing well, but in a group. Yeah, it's a fairly well proven theory, actually. So I've been doing it so long. 80 to 85% of people can sing in a group. 10 to 15 or 12 or 13%, if you're doing the maths, can sing on their own quite well. And probably, I think, 2 to 3% of people, and I do think it's that low, can't sing, so they can't hold a note. And in all the years I've been doing it, I think I probably had two people. By the way, I should emphasise there are none in Tideswell Choir. They're all fabulous. But probably 2 people who really can't sing, and that is a problem. That is a problem. But community choirs are there for the community, and they're there for people's enjoyment and the camaraderie and all the good things that go with it. So it's not a massive problem if you have one person in a choir that can't hold a note. Rhythm's more of a problem.
Right, and I do know as well that Tideswell have quite a few soloists. Is that normal in a choir format?
Yeah. What will happen is you will get, like in any sort of population of people, you get some people who want to perform on their own and other people who want to just be part of the chorus. So the ones that want to perform on their own, they're very welcome. The more soloists, the better, within reason in a choir, because it gives it variety.
Right, and in Tideswell itself, this is quite remarkable for a small village. There's another organisation called the Tideswell Singers. Do you get involved with them at all?
No, I haven't. I've had no involvement with the Tideswell Singers, I'm afraid. I can't tell you about them. You probably know more about them than I do.
I just imagine this choir rivalry in a small Derbyshire village, but clearly not.
No, I don't think so. It may be that the Tideswell Singers sing a different kind of music. So in a lot of towns, for example, I mean, in Knutsford, where I live, there are probably 5 or 6 choirs. And so, there's one that will sing choral music, sort of very serious music like Bach's Mass and things like that. And there might be another choir which sings pop songs, and then you'll get those in the middle. So that does tend to happen. So you can have more than one choir in the same place, but they don't necessarily compete.
And in your career with Tideswell up to now, I know they've done quite a few performances. Were you involved in the performance with the BBC Young Musician of the Year?
Yes. So that was in Buxton, in a church in Buxton, yeah.
And that, I mean, that must have been something both for the choir and for the Young Musician of the Year.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, she played the piano so well, and it was her brother who played at the royal wedding, the cello.
Oh, right.
Do you remember that? And the family came. Her parents came with some of the children. I think they have 7 children who are all at music college. So
Wow.
yeah, and incredible. So that was a good night. Yeah.
That would make for a fantastic Christmas at their house, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Lots of sorry to interrupt. I actually asked one of them how many pianos they had in the house, and they have 4. So it must be quite interesting.
We have one in my house, and I know from very recent experience it's quite expensive to get them tuned.
Yes, yeah.
Quite expensive, but quite important. And am I right in thinking that you're playing at the Edinburgh Fringe this year as well?
No, the Buxton Fringe.
Oh, right, the Buxton Fringe. Ah, well, that makes
playing at the Edinburgh Fringe. I haven't been told about it.
that makes far more sense. And the Buxton Fringe is a fantastic event throughout the whole of Buxton. Have you been involved in that before?
We did it last year. Yeah,
right.
In July. Yeah, at the Methodist Church in Buxton. Yeah.
Right. Well, I saw the choir in Buxton at the reopening of the pump room, the historic pump room, which was a fantastic event.
Yeah.
But this year, the choir are going on a completely new adventure, one that's familiar to yourself, and that's a Scandinavian cruise. Is it the whole choir that's going?
Most of them, yeah. Those that can. So this is something because when I do these cruises, they do have groups of entertainers, if you like, coming on. I don't think they very often have this many in a group. So I thought it would be an interesting idea if the choir were up for it, that they all went on to the cruise ship. So what's happening is I think it's the 8th of September. It's Fred Olsen ship, and they are the ship is going to Norway, cruising around the fjords, and the choir are coming and will perform for the passengers at least twice during the week. So that will be really, really good because the passengers will love it.
And do the passengers get involved in that, or is it left to the choir?
In this case, I mean, when I go on cruise ships, I run a choir from the passengers, and then that passenger choir will do a performance at the end for the other passengers. That's what happens. In this case, I would imagine there might be a choir being run by somebody else from the passengers, but we will perform for the passengers, although, as does happen on some occasions, some of them may get up and join in.
Sometimes you can't stop yourself.
No, absolutely.
And I know other cruises have involved a kind of a question and answer session about the choir. Are you planning anything like that on this cruise?
I don't know. It may happen, yeah. I mean, if it does happen, that's fine. So it's good. We've got some good music planned for this cruise, including a Pirates of Penzance medley, which is good fun. And that's the sort of thing. And the Jersey Boys music as well. So it's going to be a real mixture.
And that's quite interesting because a lot of people, when they think of choirs, they think of churches and choral music and all that kind of thing. But Tideswell's a very different kind of a choir.
Yeah. Does a complete variety, ranging from traditional sort of Welsh male voice choir music through to some classical music, through to things like the Jersey Boys, and "Oh, When the Saints Go Marching In" is one of their favourites, and quite often we end a concert with it. And I think that's something we might be hearing tonight.
In terms of your choir on the cruise ship, how long are you actually away for?
It's just a week. This one, it's a short one, so it's going from Newcastle across to Norway and several cities. I can't exactly remember which ones, but Norway, Sweden, that sort of area.
Right, and are you taking your own musical instruments, or are they already on board the ship?
No, what happens is that all these ships have got pianos. They've got 2 or 3 pianos in different parts of the ship, so we will use one of those. Yeah, that's all included. We don't have to take it with us, fortunately.
Right, but you're taking Alison with you?
Alison's coming, yeah. Alison, she's very important, Alison. She's coming, yeah.
Excellent. And I've got to ask you this, because on the website, and I've seen them live as well, they are all very smartly dressed, and they're all in different outfits. So are they taking a complete wardrobe for 7 days?
I don't. Well, the only choir uniform they need, as they call it, the choir uniform, is for performing. So I don't know how many how many other sets of clothing the gents are going to take with them. I don't know.
Well, let's hope they're all matching, because they certainly look the bee's knees when they are all like that. And as you mentioned very recently, one of your songs is "When the Saints Go Marching In," and I think Dave might well have that one primed, ready to go.
Great.
I love catching you out.
Totally unannounced.
I know. Well, I love catching you out, because I know one day you'll be off brewing up, and I'm dying to see you come running back with 2 brews in your hand. Anyway, you're live back on the show.
2 brews. Nick's in Cheshire. I'm in Derbyshire. So no point bringing 2 brews.
The way technology's going now, you'll be able to pass a brew through the screen.
Yeah,
very soon.
So it's Mike Madden on the Art Show on Expat Radio. Not yet brewed up. I'm hoping for a chance in the break. But tonight I'm talking to musical director Nick Montague. Welcome back, Nick.
Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you.
And although we talked about Tideswell Male Voice Choir before the break, there's a couple of things I want to touch on. First of all, you originally trained as a chartered accountant and wrote a successful business book. So how and why the transition into music?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, when I was at school, you've done your research. When I was at school, I had a choice to what to do. So I actually did music A-level, and then I thought, well, do I go and try and do music as a career, or do I go and try and do something which is a bit more reliable? And I actually decided to go and do something which is a bit more reliable and become. I didn't actually know what I wanted to do, but I became a chartered accountant after about 5 years studying. But I carried my music on all the way through. So I've been playing the piano since I was 6, and I had lessons all the way through, did my grades and all that sort of thing. And then I got drawn into the world of musicals when I was about 18, and joined lots of different societies, played the piano, did lots and lots of playing the piano, accompanist, and also was on the stage, and I've done a few lead parts, not that well, to be honest with you. Been in lots of choruses on lots of stages. In fact, round here in those days when amateur dramatics was a lot bigger than it is now, I've done several shows at the Opera House in Manchester and also at the Palace, which was a great experience. And in those days, we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s. In those days, you could actually... You would get 1,500 to 2,000 people a night in those theatres for an amateur show. That just doesn't happen anymore.
No, it's quite incredible. I mean, those two places are still going in Manchester, as is the Royal Exchange, which is another fantastic theatre. But they do tend to have their own companies or the travelling shows that come up from London.
Yeah.
So you've had 40 years or more on and off the stage, and I suppose the transition from off stage to on stage and vice versa, they bring their own different challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably, well, I was going to say it's probably a lot easier on stage. I think it probably is easier on stage. But when you're a musical director, the interesting thing about that, when you're doing a musical, a show, is that the night of the show, the week of the show, however long it's running for, it's all you're controlling it. So you start it, you stop it, you speed it up, you slow it down, and you've also got an orchestra or a band, as they're called, probably 10 to 15 players in a band in a pit in front of you. You might have 50 to 60 people on the stage, and you've got to conduct them all, control them all, and it's quite a challenge. But that's the most enjoyable part of the whole thing. And you know, with amateur theatre, the rehearsals go on and on and on and on. Whereas with a professional theatre, they will probably rehearse for 6 to 8 weeks and then put the show on. Whereas amateurs, because things have changed a lot and the amateur groups need to keep their members, they tend to rehearse for 3-4 months for every show, and that's can be quite wearing if you're there 3 times a week.
I can imagine it would put a lot of strains within the cast and without the cast as well. Yeah. It's for anybody who's not been to the theatre recently or has never been to the theatre, it is quite something when you see those people on stage, and quite often the band or the orchestra are unseen, but it is quite something, and the control of that orchestra, that all falls down to you, and therefore really the pace of the whole play falls to you.
Oh, it does, yeah. I mean, I did a show which I won't name, because then people will know which one I'm talking about. When we actually tried to, we wanted to finish it before 10 o'clock, because you know the expression is it goes down. That's what time it finishes, and we wanted to finish at 10 o'clock, and it was quite a long show. So we had a bit of a game in the orchestra pit that we'd play the music a little bit faster each night, and we actually managed to get to 2 minutes to 10 by the Saturday. So that the dancers came up to me one night and said, "Please, can you play the dances a little bit slower?" So, so you do genuinely. You can't really change it much, but you can definitely change the pace, yeah. But the great thing about doing these shows is that you virtually always have a professional band, and on the amateur shows the band don't actually arrive until the day before the show starts, and you have one rehearsal with the band and then you're in. But because they're so good, the professional musicians, they play it note perfect. So it's a real pleasure to conduct them, because they know what they're doing and they're so good.
And it kind of puts in context what you touched on earlier, that you played lead roles, but actually in a lead role, you concentrate on your other actors and yourself. But compared to a musical director, it's a bit of a doddle.
Well, yeah, I can say that, can't I? Because I'm not really good at lead roles. But the lead roles will probably think it's the hardest bit, but I don't think it is, no. You've only got one thing to think about, really, haven't you? So,
indeed,
well,
yes.
But it's great fun. It's great fun.
I do love the theatre, and the Royal Exchange in particular, which is a marvellous small theatre where you are very, very close to the action. And I think we probably need to get back to Tideswell itself, not the village, but the choir. We've talked about the Buxton Fringe and the Scandinavian Cruise, but what else have you got planned for the summer season?
Okay, so the next concert is a joint concert. So quite often we do joint concerts with other choirs, some male, some ladies choirs. And we're actually doing a joint concert with a ladies choir in Altrincham called Davocci, and they're very, very good choir. We've got to be as good as them because my sister's in that choir, so we need to make sure we do a decent job that night. They've won awards and they're excellent, and we're doing a joint concert with them on May the 18th in I think it's in Hale Barnes in Cheshire. And
right.
Then, so that'd be a good night. And then the choir are appearing again this year in July in the Buxton Fringe. I'm not exactly sure of the date. And then we're going on the cruise. So yeah.
And I know you get invited to some places a little bit further afield, like Haverfordwest and Nottingham. Is that still going?
Yeah. We went to Nottingham last summer for another joint concert. So what tends to happen with choirs like this is that they will sort of do an exchange. So 1 year you will go to them and do a joint concert. Next year they'll come to you, and that's the way it sort of works. So yeah, all over the place. Yeah.
And have you got what you would consider a home venue for the Tideswell Choir?
Yeah, the home venue is the church in Tideswell, which you'll know, the Cathedral of the Peaks.
I do know it very well, and Tideswell's a lovely village. And is it? I just have this vision of all these men turning up on Tuesday nights to get out there and practice. Yes,
exactly. That's what happens in the old grammar school, which is the room or the building that they rehearse in, which is their home, which is right opposite the church. So it's a beautiful venue.
And do you get 40 people there every week, or are there sometimes people can't make it, or is it very, very committed?
It's very committed, but obviously, some people go on holiday at certain times of the year, but generally speaking, it's very good. Yeah.
And what have you got any more plans for the choir? I know you've got this cruise, which is a completely new thing for them. Where are they going to go after this? Are there some plans?
Yeah, the plans are to grow the choir, to bring in younger members as well, because we always like to have younger guys to come in as well, to move, the gradual process of moving on. And this year, the focus is on musical, what they call show tunes, and they're proving to be very successful. So stuff like Oklahoma and South Pacific, and more modern musicals like the Jersey Boys, as I mentioned before. So the plans for the choir are growth and building up the numbers, and most importantly, as the guys will, if they hear this, they'll agree with me, enjoying it. That's the most important thing.
I have never seen a musical performance with everybody with a smile on their face. It was amazing seeing them in Buxton. Everybody was really enjoying what they were doing.
Yeah.
And when you get these new songs coming in, and I think we're going to hear one quite soon. Are there already arrangements for the choir, or do you have to work that out yourself?
No, we use professional arrangements. Partly because of copyright. So, because it's easier, because somebody's already done the hard work, and most of them are quite good. Some of them aren't. So I always look at the arrangements first before we commit to buying the copies for the choir, because there are some that aren't great, but most of them are good. And also, if you do it yourself, you have to obtain copyright, and that's it can be done, but it's quite a lengthy process, tracking down the rights holder and obtaining permission and all that sort of thing. I actually did that for, I don't know whether you've ever seen Tideswell Male Voice Choir sing Right Said Fred, that well-known bumper hit by Bernard Cribbins.
I have never heard them do that, no.
Well, we do it. So I obtained the rights from, I can't remember who it was now, and arranged it for the choir. And it went down very well. So they all put their caps on and made lots of noises. So,
well, it's been wonderful talking to you. I have no idea where Dave's gone. Are you still there, Dave?
Yeah, of course I'm here. I'm ready, bracing myself for it. I've actually found a choir that are out in Africa that did a version of Ed Sheeran, one of his songs, and it's unbelievable. But I'm going to play it a bit later on for you, so you can all hear that as well. But yeah, I might have to take a trip back to Altrincham to find out your sister's band as well to hear a choir.
Oh, you should. Davocci. Look them up on the internet. Davocci.
Right. Well, we might have to.
A plug.
Brilliant.
Dave has something in common with me in that we're both from Sale in Cheshire, so only down the road from
right.
So, as Dave says he's ready, thank you very much for your appearance tonight, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure.
And we mentioned the complications with rhythms and melodies, and we're going to play out with the Tideswell Male Voice Choir an Unchained Melody. You've been listening to the Arts Show podcast with Mike Madden. Come back soon for more artists, authors, musicians and anyone else connected with the arts. We're going to play out with Mike Sanchez and I Don't Stand a Chance.
Baby, you hiding something that you don't want me to know, because I'm getting a vibe from way down the side, like you're just about ready to go. If you can't tell me where you stayed last night, you just can't cope with treating me right. I'm on the road to heartbreak, now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know and I can't make you dance. Well, I said goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. heartbreak. Now's the time to tell me so, because I'm getting a chill like I'm gonna be ill. I know you don't want me no more. I won't be satisfied with your little white lies. Girl, I've only just begun to realize I don't stand a chance. No, I don't stand a chance. You don't wanna know when I can't make you dance. Well, I'll say goodbye. Find yourself another guy. I wish you were mine, but I'm losing my mind. I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance. I don't stand a chance, baby. I don't stand a chance.